There are moments in life when the silence we carry feels like punishment, when keeping our mouth shut feels like suffocation. We want to speak, we want to scream, we want to respond, we want to clarify, defend, and make sure that our name doesn't get trampled under the weight of someone else's misunderstanding. We want justice. We want to be heard. But what do you do when God instructs you to do the opposite? When he tells you to keep quiet, to say nothing, to stay still while your heart is in flames and your mind is at war? It's not easy. It's not comfortable. And yet it is divine. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is warfare. And there are seasons in your life where the instruction from heaven is not to speak, but to seal your lips, because God is doing something bigger than your need to be understood. There is a difference between reacting and responding. And there is a holy discipline in not saying what you could say just because you want to say it. Some of us were raised to think silence equals powerlessness. But in the kingdom of God, silence can be strategy. It can be protection. It can be obedience. And obedience always positions you for divine outcomes. Because here's the truth. Not everything deserves your words. Not every attack deserves your attention. Not every lie needs a counterstatement. And not every room requires your voice to validate your identity. When God tells you to keep your mouth shut, he is not trying to rob you of your dignity. He is not minimizing your pain. He is not ignoring the injustice. He is preparing you for elevation. And sometimes elevation comes through what you don't say, not through what you prove. There's a difference between being silent because you're scared and being silent because you trust God. There's a difference between withholding your words because you're afraid of conflict and withholding your words because you know you're standing under divine instruction. There is a sacred kind of silence that doesn't come from insecurity, but from wisdom. And wisdom knows if I speak now, I might miss what God is doing later. Let's be honest. Keeping your mouth shut is hard when everything in your flesh is demanding a response, when your name is being dragged, when your motives are being questioned, when your kindness is being taken for weakness, when your silence is being misinterpreted as guilt. But this is where the discipline of the Spirit steps in. Because you are not fighting for approval, you are walking in purpose. And purpose will always require restraint. The enemy wants to bait you into premature expression. He wants you to defend yourself out of insecurity. He wants you to curse what you should be blessing. He wants you to gossip instead of guard. He wants you to be loud when heaven is calling you to be still. But you can't fight spiritual battles with carnal weapons. You can't win divine wars with human logic. You have to trust that God sees what you don't say. He hears what you whisper through your tears. He knows what you're carrying in the silence. And he will respond in ways you never could. Sometimes silence is your loudest sermon. It preaches self-control. It reveals maturity. It declares, Sinai, don't need to explain myself when God is my vindicator. And I know that's not easy. It's not glamorous. You don't get applause for being silent. You don't get likes or comments or validation, but you get peace. You get heaven's favor. You get clarity. You get preservation. You get the quiet strength of a soul that knows where their help comes from. Let me tell you something. God is not interested in you proving your worth through words. He wants your life to do the talking. And sometimes, in order for your life to speak, your mouth must be silent, because some breakthroughs are tied to your discipline. Some miracles are waiting on your restraint. Some doors will open not because of how loud you shouted, but because of how still you were when you could have shouted. When Jesus stood before Pilate, accused and misunderstood, he said nothing, nothing. The Son of God, the Word made flesh, stood there and chose silence. Why? Because purpose doesn't argue. Purpose doesn't debate with darkness. Purpose doesn't entertain mockery. Purpose knows. And when you know who you are, you don't need to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That kind of silence can only come from intimacy with God. It's not natural. It's supernatural. It's birthed in the quiet place, in the place where you've wrestled with God and won peace instead of permission to vent. It's cultivated through tears that nobody sees and prayers that break you open in private. It's built when you want to explode, but the Holy Spirit arrests your tongue and reminds you that your future is too important to be jeopardized by your feelings. Your voice is powerful, but so is your silence. Use both with wisdom, because sometimes God allows you to be silent in a storm, not because he's ignoring you, but because he's showing the storm that you've already won. And silence in the face of chaos says to the enemy, so don't control me. It's not apathy, it's authority. It's you stepping out of the way so that God can step in. Sometimes God will let them lie on you just to show that he can still promote you. Sometimes he'll let them reject you just to show that rejection was redirection. Sometimes he'll allow you to be left out so that you never forget that you don't need their seat when he has a table prepared for you. And in those moments, your silence becomes sacred. Let it hurt. Let it sting. But don't let it move you, because elevation doesn't require validation. If God spoke it, he will perform it. And if he told you to be quiet, trust that your silence is not in vain. He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating outcomes that your words could never secure. What you're holding back in your mouth, he's releasing in your destiny. You're not being passive, you're being positioned. You are not weak for staying silent. You are wise. You are not passive for not clapping back. You are powerful, because real power is not shown in how loud you can get. It's shown in how still you can remain when all hell is breaking loose. This season may be painful, but it is not purposeless. God is sharpening your discernment. He is teaching you when to speak and when to stay silent. He is growing you in the fruit of the Spirit: self-control, patience, long-suffering. These are not traits we admire on the surface, but they are the bedrock of spiritual maturity. And God will test them not in theory, but in real-life moments where everything in you wants to speak. And yet you obey the whisper, not now, does not mean ever. There may come a time to speak, to testify, to share. But if the instruction now is silence, obey it, because there is glory on the other side of your discipline. There is strength being built in your silence. There is a deeper intimacy with God that can only come when your mouth is closed, but your ears are open. You are being formed in the quiet. Don't despise it. This is not punishment. It is preparation. This is not God withholding. You're being hidden for glory. And when the time comes, you won't need to fight for the microphone. God will hand it to you. Not because you demanded it, but because you were faithful in the silent season. And those who are faithful in silence are often trusted with sound. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them question. You don't owe them an explanation when God has already given you a word. Let them wonder how you made it. Your silence will become your testimony. Because when God finishes what he started, your life will say everything your words never had to. So keep your mouth shut, not out of fear, but out of faith. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because you are not where you are by accident, and you are not going where you're going by performance. You're going by obedience, and obedience always wins, even in silence. So sometimes God will quiet you to teach you that your voice was never the weapon. His word is. He will let you sit in silence until you realize that the greatest defense you have is not your mouth, it's your posture of surrender, your posture of trust. Your posture of choosing him over your urge to be seen and heard. Because if God is truly your vindicator, why are you trying to vindicate yourself? There's a spiritual maturity that is forged in the furnace of silence. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't come with clarity at first. Often it comes with confusion, with nights spent wondering, so God, how long do I have to hold this in? How long do I have to take the high road? How long do I have to walk away from conversations that I could so easily win? And God, in his silence, teaches us what trust really looks like. Trust is not proven in what you sing about on Sunday. It's revealed in what you do on Monday, when the pressure is real, when the temptation to respond is loud, and when your feelings don't match your faith. You're not just keeping quiet because you're holy. You're keeping quiet because you're healed. Healed enough to not need to be right. Healed enough to not retaliate. Healed enough to not need to be center stage in every conflict. That's what growth looks like. It looks like choosing not to respond, not because you didn't hear what they said, not because you didn't feel the sting, but because you've been with God long enough to know that he has already gone before you. There's something sacred about silence when it's rooted in reverence, when it's not coming from fear, but from awe. Awe that the same God who created the heavens is orchestrating the details of your story. That the same God who led Moses through the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel, who walked through the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that same God is standing beside you in your silence saying, I've got this. Let me be God while you be still. Do you trust him enough to say nothing? It's easy to trust when things are going our way. It's easy to be silent when everyone applauds your restraint. But can you trust him when your silence costs you something? When it costs you your reputation? When it costs you relationships? When it costs you the satisfaction of having the last word? Can you trust him when your dignity is being dragged through the mud and your name is in rooms you've never entered? There are some battles God won't let you fight because your hands are too valuable for what he's about to place in them. He doesn't want them dirty from petty arguments and ego wars. He doesn't want you tangled in conversations that diminish your spirit and dilute your anointing. He needs your hands clean, your heart pure, and your voice preserved for the platform he's building. And sometimes the only way to keep you from fighting in the wrong arena is to tell you, fine, be quiet. God is not always interested in making you comfortable. He is committed to making you complete. And completeness requires the death of pride, the death of needing to be understood, the death of needing to be loud. Because when you've been healed by God, your need for validation begins to die. You stop needing people to agree with your version of the story. You stop needing to be invited to defend yourself. You start realizing that your story is safe in God's hands, even when your voice is absent from the room. Your silence is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence of where you've placed your trust. And trust does not mean understanding everything. Trust means obeying even when you don't. There are people who will never understand why you kept quiet. Let them misunderstand you. Let them form their opinions. Let them create their narratives. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to prove your character to people committed to questioning it. You don't have to chase down rumors like they carry your destiny. They don't. Your silence says, I'm not afraid of being misunderstood anymore. And that is liberation. That is spiritual maturity. The enemy loses power when you stop reacting. He feeds on reaction. He thrives in chaos, but silence confuses him. He expects you to rage. He expects you to retaliate. He expects you to post, to vent, to explode. But when you're still, when you whisper, God, I give this to you, heaven starts moving in ways you couldn't orchestrate in 1,000 arguments. There's a version of you on the other side of this silence that you haven't met yet. A version of you that is stronger, wiser, more grounded. A version of you that doesn't flinch at criticism, that doesn't shrink when misunderstood, that doesn't grasp for affirmation. That version of you is being born right now in the fire of restraint, in the tears of self-control, in the midnight prayers where you say to God, this hurts, but I trust you more than I trust my emotions. You are not just surviving this season. You are being shaped by it. Your anointing is being refined in the quiet. You're learning to hear God more clearly because the noise of your own voice is no longer drowning him out. He's been speaking all along, but now you're finally still enough to listen. And in that stillness, you hear the assurance of heaven. I will defend you. I will restore you. I will vindicate you. You just keep your eyes on me. Don't confuse silence with defeat. Don't confuse the quiet with absence. God is in the silence. He's closer than you think. And he's not just watching, he's working. Working in rooms you can't enter. Working in hearts you can't change. Working in timelines you don't understand. And when it's all said and done, the fruit will speak for itself. Let your fruit talk. Your silence will become a story one day. Someone will look at your life and wonder how you didn't lose your mind, how you didn't retaliate, how you didn't clap back or spiral out of control. And you'll say, I wanted to, but God told me to stay quiet. And he showed me that peace is louder than pride, that obedience is louder than offense, that elevation is louder than explanation. This is what trust looks like. This is what faith costs. Not just singing when things go well, but staying silent when your soul is screaming for justice. God sees that. He honors that. You are not going unnoticed in heaven. Your obedience is echoing in eternity. You are not burying your voice. You are planting it. And when the time is right, the harvest will speak. People will see the fruit of your restraint and know it could only be God. They will see how you handled betrayal with grace, how you wore rejection with dignity, how you embraced obscurity with honor. That's not natural. That's supernatural. And it will be a testimony not just of who you are, but of who your God is. So stay still. Stay silent. Let your silence prophesy. Let it say what words can't. Let it become your sanctuary when the world demands a performance. You don't have to perform for a stage God hasn't built. You don't have to defend a destiny that's already sealed. You don't have to shout to be heard by heaven. God heard you the first time, and he never forgot. He's not just working on your behalf. He's forming you through the very silence that feels like punishment. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You are being prepared for something that will require a level of discipline that only this season can produce. You are being trained in the art of staying still while God fights your battles. And when the battle is over and the dust settles and the crowd moves on, you will remain stronger, wiser, and still whole. Because you didn't let your emotions lead you. You didn't let your pride own you. You didn't let offense define you. You let God lead. And that is victory. So no, this is not easy, but it is worth it. Every tear, every moment of restraint, every time you bit your tongue when you wanted to scream, every moment you chose dignity over drama, it's all part of the story. And heaven is writing it page by page, moment by moment. Keep your mouth shut, not out of fear, but out of fire. The fire of purpose, the fire of discipline, the fire of someone who knows that silence can be sacred and stillness can be strength. You're almost there. Don't break now. Don't open your mouth when the battle is almost over. Let God finish what he started. Your silence is not wasted. It's holy. And one day when God opens the door, when the stage is set, when the platform is ready, you'll speak. And when you do, it won't be from pain. It will be from power. It won't be from needing to be heard. It will be from knowing you were always seen, always loved, always backed by heaven. Until then, be still and know that he is God and that he is working, even when your mouth is shut. There will come a time in your walk with God when you begin to realize that silence is not just something you endure, it's something you choose. It becomes your response, not because you are weak, but because you've tasted what happens when you trust God to speak louder than you ever could. When you've seen what he can do with the words you didn't say, the fights you didn't start, the rebuttals you never gave. That is when silence becomes sacred. It becomes holy ground. It becomes an altar, a place where you lay down your desire to be right in exchange for righteousness. When you've seen God vindicate you in ways you never asked for, your silence shifts. It becomes rooted. It's no longer painful. It's purposeful. Because now you know that what God has for you cannot be lost in translation. It cannot be destroyed by lies. It cannot be altered by opinions. His promises do not require your constant explanation. They require your consistent obedience. But let's not pretend that this level of silence comes easily. It's not instant. It's cultivated. It's pressed into your soul during long nights of wrestling with your own emotions. It's refined in the moments when every part of you is rising up with fire and fury, and the Spirit quietly whispers, "When it go, I've got this." You don't develop this kind of restraint overnight. You develop it in prayer. You develop it in the secret place. You develop it in the tension between who you used to be and who you're becoming. And slowly, God begins to kill the noise inside of you so that his stillness can become your strength. You begin to see the power in not answering every accusation, the dignity in walking away from conflict, the wisdom in choosing peace when war seems justified. You begin to recognize that the enemy's greatest weapon is not always destruction, it's distraction. And if he can distract you into defending yourself at every turn, he'll keep you from the places God is trying to lead you. You don't need to fight in every room you're in. Sometimes your greatest defense is to simply walk in knowing who you are and letting God handle the rest. It's hard to be quiet when you've been misunderstood. It's hard to keep still when you've been disrespected. But in that holy pause between your impulse and your obedience, that's where transformation happens. That's where you go from being led by your flesh to being led by the Spirit. That's where you begin to shift from being reactive to being rooted. Silence doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you've chosen not to let what you feel lead your life. And that is spiritual maturity. Because what if your silence is protecting you from becoming someone you don't recognize? What if your silence is God's way of keeping your heart soft, your spirit open, your focus clear? What if the very thing that feels like a muzzle is actually a mantle of humility, a mantle of discipline, a mantle of purpose? God doesn't just want to change how you speak. He wants to change why you speak. He wants your voice to be a vessel, not a weapon. He wants your words to heal, not harm. He wants your silence to mean something, that you know where your help comes from, that you know when to speak and when to surrender, that you trust him more than your own need to be heard. You see, silence doesn't erase truth. It just preserves it. There are some truths so precious, so sacred, that they don't need to be shouted. They need to be lived. And when your life becomes the evidence, your mouth can rest. Because truth has a sound even in silence. It reverberates through your peace. It shines through your decisions. It's seen in your character, your consistency, your calm. You are not being silenced. You are being sanctified. And that sanctification will cost you something. It will cost you the satisfaction of having the last word. It will cost you the comfort of instant justice. But what you gain in return is priceless. You gain clarity, you gain freedom, you gain the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. God is developing your character in the silence. He's stripping away the layers of insecurity that make you feel like you have to prove yourself. He's removing the pride that says, see, I need to respond to feel seen. And instead, he's replacing it with humility, with peace, with trust. You don't have to convince anyone when God has already called you. There are seasons when the greatest thing you can do is not speak about what God told you, but wait on him to show them. Not explain your calling, but walk in it. Not defend your decisions, but let the fruit speak. There is a kind of authority that doesn't shout, it stands, it walks, it endures. And when the time is right, it speaks with clarity because it has been cultivated in obedience. You don't need to worry about what people think of you. God is the keeper of your name. He's the protector of your reputation. And if he wants your story told, he will tell it. If he wants your name cleared, he will clear it. But if he wants you to stay hidden for a season, will you obey him there too? Because hiding is not punishment, it's preparation. And silence is not rejection, it's refinement. There's an entire world that tells us our voice is our power, and in many ways that's true. But what they don't tell you is that power without wisdom becomes destruction. The enemy loves when people speak prematurely. He loves when they post their plans before they're protected. He loves when they expose their dreams to people who were never assigned to carry them. That's why God teaches his children the art of silence, so that when they speak, it's from a place of strength and not survival. There's a peace that comes from knowing you didn't force anything, that you didn't manipulate your way to victory, that you didn't scream or strive to be seen. There's a peace in knowing you were still and God showed up, that he opened the door, that he vindicated you, that he whispered your name into rooms you never entered, that he turned your silence into significance. You will never regret what you didn't say when it was God telling you to be quiet. But you will regret the words spoken in haste, in pride, in fear. Silence, when it's led by the Spirit, is never a loss. It's a seed. And when the season shifts, that seed will bloom. And when it blooms, it won't just bless you. It will bless everyone who saw you suffer silently and still chose to trust God. Don't underestimate what God can do in your stillness. Some of the greatest moves of God happened in the quiet. When Moses stood at the edge of the Red Sea with chaos behind him and impossibility in front of him, God didn't tell him to scream. He told him to stand still. And when he did, the sea parted. Your stillness is powerful. Your silence is not passive. It's prophetic. It's you standing still while God makes a way. It's you surrendering control so that heaven can move. It's you saying to believe that my God is who he says he is, even if I never get the chance to tell my side of the story. And isn't that the point? That our lives would point to him? That people wouldn't just hear us talk about faith, but see us live it, even when it costs us our comfort, our pride, our visibility. You don't need to be louder to be heard. You need to be faithful to be trusted. And faithfulness often looks like restraint, like holding back when everything in you wants to rush forward, like being silent when everything in you wants to shout, like trusting that even if no one claps for your discipline, heaven is recording every moment. This is a hard season, but it is a holy one. And if you don't give up, if you don't break under the pressure of being misunderstood, if you don't lose your identity in the noise of trying to be validated, God will reward you. Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not through applause or viral vindication, but he will reward you with peace, with strength, with favor, with clarity, with doors you didn't knock on and blessings you didn't earn, because you were silent when it mattered, because you trusted him when it hurt, because you stayed still when everything in you wanted to fight. That kind of obedience is rare. That kind of maturity is costly. That kind of silence is loud in heaven. You are not weak for being silent. You are not forgotten for being still. You are not overlooked for being obedient. You are becoming everything God designed you to be, not in the spotlight, but in the silence, not in applause, but in alignment. So rest your voice. Let your fruit speak. Let your peace preach, and let your God fight. He will not fail you. And when the moment comes, when your voice is needed, when your story is asked for, when your testimony is called upon, you will speak not with bitterness, but with beauty, not with pain, but with purpose. And your words will carry weight because your silence carried wisdom. Until then, stay still. Keep your mouth shut. And let God finish what he started. There's something sacred that happens when you stop fighting to be understood and start resting in the truth that God understands you fully. When you lay your reputation, your frustration, your desire for vindication at his feet, there's a strange kind of peace that settles over your soul. It's not the kind of peace that comes from resolution. It's the kind that comes from surrender. You stop needing answers. You stop needing explanations. You stop rehearsing the perfect response in your head, and instead, you just breathe. You breathe and trust that the one who formed you is still forming the situation in your favor. You learn with time that silence is not just an action, it's a posture. It's the bending of the will. It's the closing of the mouth while the heart stays open to God. And in that space, you find clarity. You find that what once felt like a cage now feels like a cocoon. You begin to see that you're not being confined, you're being transformed. The silence that once tormented you now begins to teach you. It teaches you how to listen, how to feel deeply without the need to react immediately, how to honor God even when your flesh is begging for retaliation. There's a divine strength that's cultivated when your spirit submits to the command, be still. Not just still in body, but still in spirit. Still in your soul when chaos is swirling around you. Still in your mind when the narratives being written about you are false. Still in your heart when betrayal has knocked the wind out of you. That stillness doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've chosen to place your pain into the hands of the only one who knows what to do with it. And it's in that place where the silence meets surrender that the voice of God becomes unmistakable. Not because he's suddenly louder, but because you've finally quieted everything else. You've quieted the inner critic. You've quieted the imaginary courtroom where you argue with people in your mind. You've quieted the anxiety that makes you feel like if you don't speak, you'll be swallowed. And in that stillness, his voice becomes your anchor. His whispers start shaping your perspective. And you realize that what felt like a season of suppression was actually a season of protection. He was protecting your spirit from being contaminated by conversations that would have infected your purpose. He was protecting your calling from being reduced to commentary. He was protecting your future from being compromised by present emotions. And now that you see it, you thank him. You thank him for not letting you respond. You thank him for holding your tongue. You thank him for those long nights when you cried out and felt unheard, because now you know he heard you. He just chose to answer with action instead of words. And as the healing deepens, you start to notice something else. Your appetite for vindication begins to fade. The craving to prove yourself, to correct every false narrative begins to die. Not because you no longer care, but because you've encountered a love that is louder than lies. You've sat with a God who sees you fully and loves you completely. And suddenly, the approval of people no longer feels like oxygen. It becomes optional. You don't need it to breathe anymore. You've learned to breathe in grace instead. There is freedom in that. The kind of freedom that doesn't demand to be understood, the kind of freedom that doesn't require validation to feel valuable, the kind of freedom that knows when to speak and when to be still and no longer resents the stillness. Because now you've seen what God can do in silence. You've seen him shift the hearts of those who doubted you. You've seen him soften the edges of your own pride. You've seen him rebuild what your words would have destroyed. And now your silence isn't just obedience, it's worship. You worship by walking away from arguments. You worship by choosing peace over proving a point. You worship by letting go of the need to always be heard, because you know your voice has power and you're learning to use it wisely. You're learning that the same voice that can defend can also destroy. And if you don't surrender your voice to God, you'll end up wounding with the same words that were meant to heal. But you've made a decision. You've chosen to let God use even your silence as a sermon. You've chosen to let your restraint preach. And people will look at you, at your calm, your quiet strength, and wonder how you do it. They'll wonder how you stayed grounded when everything around you was shaking. And you'll smile, not out of pride, but out of remembrance. You'll remember the moments you wanted to scream, the nights you wanted to shout your truth from the rooftops. And you'll remember the whisper that held you, "Ben, be still. I've got this." And he did. He carried you through the storm you didn't think you'd survive. He held your heart when it broke from silence. He showed up, not always in the way you expected, but always in the way you needed. And now you don't need to explain your silence, because your peace explains it for you. Your fruit speaks for you. Your favor tells the story your mouth never had to. And that's the beauty of walking with God. He tells the story better than we ever could. So you continue to walk quietly, not timidly, but intentionally. You move through life knowing that not everything deserves your voice, that not every injustice needs your commentary, that not every betrayal requires a rebuttal. Sometimes it just needs to be placed in God's hands and left there. You stop picking it back up. You stop replaying it in your mind. You stop planning your defense, and you rest. You rest in the reality that your silence is not absence, it's alignment. And in that alignment, you found the one thing the world can't manufacture, peace. That peace becomes your power. It becomes your protection. It becomes your testimony. And it begins to flow into everything you do. You speak with clarity because you no longer speak from chaos. You move with purpose because you're no longer driven by pain. You love more freely because you're no longer chained to resentment. And all of it, the healing, the peace, the strength, it all started in the silence, in the moment you surrendered your voice and gained your soul. So don't despise this season. Don't rush past it. Don't try to explain it away. Embrace it. Lean into it. Let it do its work. Let it shape you. Because when it's over, you won't just be someone who kept quiet. You'll be someone who grew deeper. Someone who heard God more clearly, someone who found healing in restraint, and someone who knows that when God says, keep your mouth shut, it's not because he's trying to silence you, it's because he's trying to sanctify you. And sanctification is never wasted. This is your moment, not to speak, but to surrender, not to fight, but to trust, not to be seen, but to be shaped. Let him shape you in the silence. Let him hold your heart while you hold your tongue. Let him build in you the strength that doesn't need a stage. And when the time comes, when your voice is needed, he'll tell you. He'll open the door. He'll place the words in your mouth. And they will come not from a place of pain, but from a wellspring of peace. Until then, rest, trust, and keep your mouth shut. Because God is speaking louder than you ever could. And he's writing a story with your silence that no human hand can erase.